All right. Well, thank you for joining me. I'm very excited to talk about aging powerfully this little class. And it's as people come in, hi. We've already started recording, um, but if you wouldn't mind muting yourselves when you come in, I am going to go ahead and get started. Um, and I can see if I can figure out how to mute everybody else, but I'm not all that good with it. So, okay, so I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go ahead and do this PowerPoint. Okay, share. All right. Okay, the computer updated the whole OS system. So, okay, let's do it. Sorry, it updated and it gives me something that I'm not used to seeing. Okay. So my apologies. Okay, here we go. Oh, yes, I allow. Sorry, you guys, this like literally, um, it literally updated last week. So I'm so sorry. Okay, so hopefully I will be able to share my screen now. If I lose you guys, please come right back because I am so sorry. It's telling me to quit and go back. Okay. So let me know. I'm going to try to share and let me know if I'm sharing.
Hi,
Hello.
Kathy.
How are you?
Good, thanks. And you?
Oh, I'm struggling trying to get my screen to share. Everything changed.
Oh,
And
oh, you mean share the what you're showing?
yeah, to share my screen.
If you click share at the bottom middle, does it not come
Uh-huh,
up?
I'm doing that. And then okay, it's finally, I think, letting me. It had set up a whole new operating system.
Oh, wow.
I
Great.
said allow 100 times. Okay, tell me if you can see it.
Yep.
You can see it. Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry about the little technical difficulties. Okay, you can see it again.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So if you don't mind muting yourselves, and then we can do questions at the end. So thank you for joining me. We're going to talk about getting stronger and healthier and sharper at any age, and we'll just start now, today. For those of you that don't know me, and those are, I know you who have joined know me, but for those of you that don't know me, here's a little bit about myself. I graduated from Harvard in biochemistry. I went to University of Pennsylvania for medical school. I've been an emergency physician for 28 years. I've been doing functional medicine coaching and full medicine for 6 years. I consider myself an Ironman. I've been a 10-time finisher, including the World Championship in Kona in 2023. I've finished 15, I think it is still 15, might be 16 at this point. Single marathons, like alone marathons, not counting the Ironman marathon at the end. And then I also did the Coast to Coast New Zealand multi-sport race. So I am familiar with trying to be healthy and strong with aging. So there's a lot to talk about, but I wanted to focus today on nutrition and exercise. There's a lot in terms of what you can do to be healthy. Sleep is important, passion and purpose, friendships, all of those are important. Today, we're going to talk about nutrition and exercise, specifically muscle, bone, and connective tissue, because those are the things that I think we can get really big bangs for our buck. And we can add little daily habits that help our long term resilience. So why is this important? It's the clock won't stop ticking for all of us. We just will continue to get older. It just doesn't stop. Our goal is to have not just a longer life, but a better life, a more vibrant life, a life where we can maintain our independence. And this is important to start right now. So what will we talk about today specifically? Muscle density, bone density, and cardiorespiratory fitness, because these are important to maintain this vitality, strength, and independence. The truth is that our muscles are at their peak when we're in our 20s and early 30s. After those ages, it declines 3 to 8% per decade. And once a woman hits menopause, bone density significantly decreases very, very rapidly. Sarcopenia is loss of muscle mass. And this leads to multiple falls and fractures and frailty. And I see it in the ER all the time, especially with this last ice storm that we've had. We are seeing people constantly falling, breaking hips, breaking ankles, breaking wrists. And the moment that you fall and have some type of an acute event like this, it immediately decreases your longevity and your vitality. You're not able to, first of all, you're requiring help from others. Your muscle mass will decrease because now you're not as active. And usually people go along in a stepwise decline and continue on towards early death. A hip fracture in particular will increase mortality just 20 to 24% in the first year alone. It is remarkable. So this is as important, if not more important, I wouldn't say more important, but it's an incredibly important thing to think about when we're thinking about our health, not just our cardiovascular health and making sure our cholesterol is in good shape and making sure that our brain health is good, but we need to talk about muscle. And this can happen anytime. So this was me breaking my wrist after a minimal fall last May. I was barely 2 feet from the ground in a squat when I fell backwards when something I was tugging on broke. I landed on my outstretched right wrist and it instantly broke. Well, it turns out what I didn't know was that I had I did know, but only previously, only like a month or two prior, that I had significant osteoporosis. And I had been in menopause for 5 years prior to this, and my bone density was significantly low. Had I not asked for the testing to be done, I would not actually have known, because a lot of testing doesn't get done in women until they're 65, which I think is a travesty. But anyway, so there's a rapid decline in estrogen and a rapid decline in bone density. So if I can tell you what to do briefly, if you happen to be finding yourself in this, or if you love any woman, sister, mother, friend who is going through menopause, please make sure they know to get enough protein, get enough calcium, phosphorus, vitamin D, and magnesium, and talk to their doctor about DEXA scan and menopause hormone therapy. So that's just my brief discussion with that. And also, I'm showing you my labs. Not only did I not have any estradiol, but my testosterone was undetectable. So testosterone is another important hormone for maintaining bone health. So advocate for yourselves. Make sure you talk to your doctors about checking your labs and making sure that your hormone levels are where they need to be. So what can we do besides labs? Okay, so first of all, we need to improve our muscle, bone connective tissue, and then our balance, right? Balance, so we don't trip and fall and break something. Well, let's talk about nutrition first. So I know a lot of you know this already, but some people don't understand what protein is made of and why it's important. So your all the cells, all our building blocks of our entire body are made up of proteins. And proteins are made up of the building blocks called amino acids. These amino acids form together to make lots of different proteins. Amino acids and proteins have storage areas in our body called muscles. So the muscle is the bank where your amino acids live, because you need amino acids and proteins for brain, for heart, for kidney. All of that is important. You have to maintain it. And if you don't get enough from what you eat, your body will take what it needs from your muscle, because heart is more important than muscle. Heart muscle is more important than skeletal muscle, for example. So the body prioritizes it. Then we have 9 essential amino acids. So we can make amino acids in our body, but 9 of them cannot be made and have to be eaten. And there are 3 in particular: isoleucine, leucine, and valine, which are called the branch chain amino acids, which have a very unique, and play a unique role. Why are they important? So these are primarily metabolized in the skeletal muscle, not in the liver. So normally when you have metabolism of amino acids, it goes through the liver first, but these go to the muscle and they trigger muscle protein synthesis. So it's like a little sign that your body, remember, you have to eat them. So if you have enough of them, then your body says, oh, I have enough. So my brain and my heart and my kidneys and all of the important organs are satisfied. Now I can start building muscle. And which one is the one in particular? It turns out it's leucine. So that particular branch chain amino acid seems to be the one that stimulates muscle building, MPS, muscle protein synthesis. And it turns out that about 2.5 grams of leucine is what stimulates this muscle protein synthesis. So that's a lot of numbers. But I want you to think about leucine is an amino acid that exists in food, okay, just in general. And so to get the 2.5 grams of leucine, you need between 20 and 30 grams of protein. Animal protein requires a little less because it's a little bit more leucine rich. Plant protein requires a little more. So for animal, you can go 20 to 25 to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. And in plant, somewhere between 25 and 30. And that will trigger your muscle building. So how much do we need altogether? The reality is, if you hit those 20 to 30 grams, you are going to be stimulating muscle building. The issue is if you don't have enough building blocks, then you're going to be increasing the muscle breakdown because you need the building blocks. The RDA, in order to avoid deficiency, says 0.8 grams per kilogram of protein per body weight, ideal body weight. But the studies that have come out that look at this in more detail really point to 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of ideal body weight. Okay, so if we're talking somebody's obese, overweight, and is 400 pounds, we're not basing it on the 400 pounds, we're basing it on their ideal body weight. So it somehow seems to end up somewhere between 0.5 gram to 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. And that is what you should be aiming for. And if you're an athlete or if you're over 65, you need to aim for a higher amount because you break down muscle more frequently if you're an athlete, and you also have resistance to building muscle when you're over 65. The issue is you cannot store protein. These are my kids, so that's why I always have them on this. You have to space the protein out. Once you hit that trigger of I am building muscle, it lasts for about 6 hours. But you can't eat like all of it in one day and expect for it to be the same. Now, there's a caveat to that because it turns out if you eat a giant meal, it's going to take longer to digest. And so this 6 hours can actually span a little bit longer. So this is not 100% accurate, but if you think about spacing out your meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or a big brunch and dinner, like 2 meals, but spacing them out, then you maintain that muscle growth time frame. Also, the maximum efficiency of this breakdown of the amount that you're eating really is at about 40 grams per meal. So we're not needing a ton per meal to satisfy this muscle build. And the other thing I want to point out in this slide is that every food has every amino acid. So if you look on the left, it's animal foods, legumes, grains, nuts, vegetables, fruits, mushrooms. Everything has everything. It's just some foods have less than others in proportion, which is why variety is very important. So, like I said, protein is in everything. If it has DNA, it has protein. And I want to point out some little tweaks that you can make in your food, for example. So this looks like a healthy meal, right? Oatmeal, apples, walnuts, and cinnamon, but that only has 8 grams of protein. So if this is your breakfast, now your body is going to be borrowing your amino acids from your skeletal muscle in order to satisfy the cell building machinery that it needs for other tasks. However, if you add some soy milk, hemp hearts, pumpkin, and chia seeds, now you're up to 20 to 25 grams of protein. It's not that big of an addition, right? So it's not that big of a tweak, but you make that tweak and now you are hitting your protein goals. Are you worried about calories? Because it sounds like, oh, how can I possibly eat this much protein? It's so much protein. Turns out it's not that much food. You saw the oatmeal with the little chia seeds and hemp hearts. 30 grams of protein, which will trigger muscle building, is 120 calories. So it's 4 calories per gram of protein. Here's an example for 20 grams. And different foods have different efficiency for this. So if you're trying to get all your protein through brown rice, you're going to have to eat 860 calories. If you're trying to get it through spinach, you only have to eat 150 calories. However, 150 calories of spinach is a heck of a lot of spinach. So be mindful. You can look this up. There are some more protein-dense foods for the amount of calories. So for example, this is a really important chart that on the left, I picked 25 grams of protein and the number of calories that it takes to reach that. If you look at egg whites are the absolute most efficient protein source in terms of protein per calorie. So it's about 120 calories to get to 25 grams of protein. Then chicken breast, non-fat Greek yogurt. Once you start to get fats in there, like whole eggs, that jumps up. So you add more calories because of the fats. Spinach has the fiber and the carbohydrate. Tempeh, so soy products are very good in terms of being efficient. And what's nice is that their fiber and their phytonutrients are really excellent. Lentils and other beans. And then you see the last 3 I wanted to point out: ribeye, quinoa, and bacon. So when you have meats that have fats embedded and marbled in there, the fat, you're getting protein from the lean meat, but then the fat is interspersed in there. And so the number of calories that you have to eat to get the 25 grams go up. And the issue with things like ribeye and bacon is that what they're wrapped up in is saturated fat. And so those fats then cause other issues down the road, like bumping up your cholesterol and increasing your inflammation. So what you choose is very important. I wanted to put quinoa in there because some people say that quinoa is like a perfect protein. I did want to mention that quinoa is fantastic. It's just that it takes a lot of calories to get the 25 grams of protein. So maybe don't focus on quinoa alone unless you're planning on doing like a long endurance training event the next day. Or you need the extra calories for a particular reason, again, like your training. So this is a super important slide to keep in mind in terms of what you can do. So if you can picture, okay, you're going to make an egg white omelet and add a lot of veggies for your fiber. You've got your egg whites, you've got the protein from the veggies and the fiber, and now you've hit that important target to keep building muscle. And antioxidants. So now you've built up your muscle, you need to recover, right? Because you're exercising. So what is going to help you recover? Well, things like berries, leafy greens, spices, green tea, and omega-3 fatty acids. And where do we find these things? We find them in plants. We find them in fatty fish. Basically those are the main sources. So if you have a variety of plant foods, then you are most likely going to be incorporating a lot of anti-inflammatory factors in there. Okay, next, bones. So bones are made up of protein and also calcium and phosphate that blend together to make something called hydroxyapatite. So key nutrients for strong bones include calcium. If you're postmenopausal, please make sure that you're getting 1,000 to 1,300 milligrams of calcium a day. Make sure you're getting your magnesium. Everything needs magnesium in the body. Make sure your doctor checks the vitamin D level to make sure that it's optimally between 50 and 80. Get your phosphorus in and vitamin K. And if you can't get it through food, then get it through supplements. Here are some plant-based sources because everyone knows that calcium is fortified and present in dairy, but there are some plant-based sources that you guys should be aware of. Leafy greens, nuts, seeds, soy products, whole grains, and fortified plant milks. So you can get your calcium sources in that way. So I'm going to give you some sample meal ideas so that you can hit those protein goals, and I'm going to do it vegetarian based because it's sometimes harder for vegetarians to think about what blends of food to put together in order to hit those protein goals. Absolutely, you can hit the protein goals easily when you're a vegetarian. It's just sometimes it's harder for vegetarians to think about what to put together. So breakfast, oatmeal with soy milk, pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, and berries. Boom, done. Next, lunch. You have a kale and lentil salad with tahini dressing. Add some chickpeas in there. Add some, you can add some nuts, some pumpkin seeds. The more diverse, the better. Maybe a snack, some almonds or pistachios. And then dinner, tofu stir fry with broccoli, beans, and nutritional yeast. Now you've hit all of your protein thresholds throughout the day, and your muscles are able to be fortified, and you can continue to grow them, which is important, remember, because we don't want to lose muscle as we get older. So in summary, from the nutrition standpoint, protein 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilo per day, ideal body weight. The higher protein foods, we talked about lentils, beans, soy, yogurt, chicken breast, turkey. Make sure you get your minerals. And if you need to, you can use supplements to get what you need. All right. Now that we've talked about that, we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about exercise because you can't eat your way out of a sedentary lifestyle. So there is such a thing called skinny fat, which means if you look at your actual weight, you might be within the proper BMI, body mass index. But if you look on a scale that looks at your body composition, you might note that you have a high fat content. So this is an example of an in-body scale. It's one that I use in my practice to see how people are doing and how they're changing over time. And you can see here, for example, someone has a normal BMI of 22.5. They go to their doctor's office, no issues there, no complaints, no concerns, except when you look at actually what their body is made of, it's made up of a higher percentage of body fat than ideal, 35%, which is higher than ideal, and a lower percentage of skeletal muscle mass, where you see there, the skeletal muscle mass is 47.6, and it's on the low end. So first of all, what are the benefits of exercise and physical fitness? I mean, it's one of the biggest bangs for your buck in terms of health. Absolutely. Like, if there's one thing that you need to focus on and you're trying to debate food versus exercise, I would say focus on exercise. It will primarily and secondarily prevent all of these things. So why does it matter? VO2 max is a huge predictor of longevity. Cardiorespiratory fitness improves heart health, insulin sensitivity, and energy even at baseline. This New England Journal article said that exercise capacity is a more powerful predictor of mortality than other established risk factors for cardiovascular disease. And this was such an important study. I'm going to just look at it briefly with you. So there were men that were referred for a treadmill stress test, and they were separated into two groups. One group had cardiovascular disease and one did not. And they checked to see how were their METs, like how was their ability to exercise, their exercise capacity. And then they followed them over time. On the left, you see the relative risk of death. And on the bottom, quintiles of exercise capacity. So to the right means the higher your exercise capacity, the higher you are able to exercise on this treadmill, the further to the right you are. The black is the normal subjects and the white is the people with cardiovascular disease. So do you notice that regardless of whether you had heart disease or not, the higher your exercise capacity is, the less likely you are to die overall. And when this was spread out over or teased out between different types of diseases, chronic diseases, it didn't matter whether you had high blood pressure, COPD, diabetes, smoking, or whether you were overweight. If you could exercise more, you had lower risk of death. So the blue bar is the people who had the lowest exercise capacity. The orange bar is the people that had the highest the highest exercise capacity. So the total cause mortality, if you look at the very right, it's TC, total cause, had everything to do with your ability to exercise. They found that every 1 MET increase in exercise capacity conferred a 12% improvement in survival. Exercise was a stronger predictor of death than high blood pressure, smoking, and diabetes. And they found the protective role even in the presence of other risk factors. And here's the part that I find really important. They found that the most striking difference in mortality was between the people who were the least fit and the very next quintile, which means the greatest change, the greatest improvement can be achieved by increasing physical activity amongst the people who are least fit. So just start is what this is saying. It doesn't matter when, just start. And this particular one shows it even more. This other study followed men over a period of 7 years, and they decided whether they were fit and stayed fit, or if they became unfit, or if they started unfit and then became fit or stayed unfit. Does that make sense? So you are either fit and then you stay the same way, or you become unfit. But either way, here are the graphs and they follow together. So if you were unfit or you became unfit, those are the green and the orange lines. Your survival rate was significantly lower than if you started out fit and stayed fit, or you started out unfit and then became fit later. So it matters what happens today. It matters what happens tomorrow, the next day. Okay, that's what matters. Don't worry about what you've been doing in the past. Let's focus on today and moving forward. Increasing fitness was associated with half the risk of stroke and death. Half. So it's not you're tired, too cold, too hot, raining, too late. Just get started. Sitting is the new smoking. Just move. Any chance you get, up and at 'em. If you're injured, you adapt. You know, with my arm being broken, I did legs. There are these beautiful things called exercise snacks. So a lot of people say, I don't have time in my day. You know, it's busy, busy, busy. Well, here's what's wonderful is that researchers have found that small snacks of exercise are just as important as doing a regimented workout. So for example, air squats, doing 10 air squats per hour, 10 air squats. So down and up. What does that take? Like 10 seconds, maybe 20 seconds. Set your alarm once every hour, get up. You know, if you're sitting at a desk, you know, you're not going to be able to exercise that day. Get up, do your air squats. How about you're on your phone? Let's do some lunges, or you can do squats with that. You know, if you're like, oh, this is my scrolling time, perfect. You're scrolling, grab your phone, do your little exercise. And then besides those snacks, let's talk about different types of exercise and how important they are, because there is a difference and they affect mitochondria in slightly different ways. So you may have heard of something called Zone 2. This is a low intensity exercise. It improves your mitochondrial efficiency. It improves how well the mitochondria make energy. Zone 4 is higher intensity. And that is important because it has a lot of effects, such as increasing mitochondrial density. So like the number of mitochondria. It also improves your VO2 max, which is the exercise capacity that we were talking about earlier. It increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor is something that increases when you have lactic acid buildup, which occurs when you are high-intensity interval training, if you're sprinting, if you're using your fast twitch muscle fibers. That causes lactic acid to increase, and lactic acid is a signaling molecule that tells the brain to stimulate this neurotrophic factor, which improves your brain health. So there's importance in both of those, Zone 2 and Zone 4. And so a lot of people will talk about using Zone 2 as your base, 80% of your workout being Zone 2. Your body uses fat for energy and some carbohydrate as well, but predominantly fat. It has all the oxygen that it needs. and you can do it for hours. As opposed to zone 4 or the higher intensity intervals, lactic acid builds up. You're using your short twitch muscles, and you should probably do this for about 20% of the time. This was an example for me. I try to combine them together. I'm like, well, if I'm going to be doing something, I'll do zone 2 for the majority of it, which was what you see with the blue and the green. And then at the end, I threw in some high intensity intervals. So you can do that as well. Go for a very slow, comfortable jog. And at the very end, add a few sprints. Sprint and rest and sprint and rest. Or how about this? Most people like to walk. I ask a lot of my clients, what are you doing for exercise? Well, we like to walk. Walk, great. But just walking is more like a zone 1. Okay, if you want to bump it up to a zone 2 and increase the intensity of the workout, you can get yourself a weighted vest, which allows you to then increase the intensity without increasing the pace, which might do well if you're having issues with like knee problems or hip problems, or you feel like the higher intensity impact doesn't do well on your joints. Get yourself a good weighted vest, and then you can call it rucking. And then you could be one of the cool kids because rucking has become really popular. It also improves your muscle strength and endurance and is fantastic for osteoporosis, especially in the spine. So this is really, I highly recommend this for people who like to walk. Get yourself a weighted vest. And speaking of resistance, this is incredibly important. We've got to lift weights. Pick things up, put them down, make it harder every time. It reduces frailty. It really is a trigger to your muscle to get better and stronger and bigger. And this is, if we don't want somebody to be wiping our butts when we're older, this is what you got to do. Okay. You try to minimize the having somebody else take care of you to the very, very ends of your life, right? You don't want to be having that drawn out for 10 or more years. So you've got to strengthen and start now. Progressive overload means that you are, when, for example, you're lifting 20 pounds in your bicep curls and you can only do 8 today, maybe the next time you do it, you can do 10. And then maybe you can do 12. And maybe then you can go up from 20 pounds to 25 pounds. And you're progressively overloading it. You are giving your muscles something to work harder for, which increases that muscle building. There is something called a failure ladder too, if you don't want to count. You take, for example, bicep curls, start with 20s, just throwing out numbers, as many as you can. When you can't go anymore, drop down to 15s, do as many as you can. When you can't do anymore, go down to 10s, then go down to 5s. It becomes a very, very efficient workout and very difficult. And will be very good at building muscle. Balance, mobility, and flexibility. And let's not forget about that. We need to have our joints be strong, and the balance and mobility is going to be extremely important. A lot of joint issues are actually issues with the tendons pulling on the bones around the joint. So if you roll your muscles, okay, and shameless plug here. This is a good way to roll your muscles. This beautiful roller that I invented along with my husband. If you roll your muscles and break up fascia, then you can stretch them more efficiently later, and it allows better movement through the joints. So whatever you use is fine with me. This just happened to be one of my favorites. And speaking of stretching, yoga, Pilates, fantastic for maintaining mobility. If anyone is interested, also, we're running a Med in the Med retreat this September. Again, another shameless plug. You can always look that up. We do beach yoga and strengthening. So, exercise recommendations. Really a minimum of 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous exercise per week. Most of it will be zone 2, adding some high intensity interval training in there. Definitely at least 2 days a week of strength training, and then follow 10 minutes of balance, stretching, and mobility. Throughout the day, add your burpees, your squats, calf raises, movement, whatever you can do to get your body moving. And if you're working from home, if you're working, somewhere where the people are very flexible, see if you can get a stand-up desk. That way you are much less likely to be sitting throughout the day, which is better for your body overall. We don't stop exercising because we grow old. We grow old because we stop exercising. So daily checklist from what we talked about today. Make sure you get adequate protein at each meal. Aim for diversity in your foods. That way you can definitely get the protein that you need. Supplement when necessary. And move, lift, walk, roll, stretch, sprint. Aging powerfully means choosing resilience over decline, and small daily habits add up to big results. Thank you so much. We're going to open it up to questions. All right. So does anybody have any questions for me? Anybody at all?
I have a question.
Yes. Hi.
So, in terms of maximizing protein, got all that. You talked a little bit about fats. What do you see as the role of fats in having a good macro profile?
Yes. So I'm a big fan of eating healthy fats. I think they're super important. And and we didn't talk about this part, there are essential fatty acids, which means you have to eat them, that are really important. So omega-3 fatty acids are anti-inflammatory, and in general, and omega-6s are in general a little bit more inflammatory. So omega-3 fatty acids are fatty acids that are found in fish, nuts, seeds. You can find them in some lean grass-fed beef, some eggs, but in general, the sources that are the highest are like algae, seafood, and nuts and seeds. So the issue with fats is that they are really calorically dense, and they become challenging because you can have a large amount of calorie intake without meaning to. So, for example, both carbohydrates and proteins give you 4 calories per gram, but fats give you 9. And if you look at oil, there's very little oil that it takes to get a large amount of calories. And so you can accidentally kind of overdo it without meaning to on the fats, like avocados, the nuts and the seeds, a handful of them will be 200 calories, So, and calories matter in terms of if you're looking for weight loss, for example. Now, if you need to gain weight because you're overdoing the exercise, you're doing endurance sports, fats are a great way to do so. Saturated fats, so things in coconut and a lot of the animal proteins, not so much fish. Fish tend to have more polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats, but the saturated fats in the meats, those saturated fat intake in general has been shown to increase cholesterol. So That is something that I say, if you're going to be, when you decide which fats to eat, try to minimize your saturated fat intake and maximize your polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fat. So did that make sense?
Totally. So understood that the type of fat matters, and that's, I know, also true for like the type of carbohydrates, but what do you think is sort of the like percentage of, say,
Okay.
protein versus fats versus carbohydrates to
Yeah.
kind of aim for
Right.
overall?
So everybody's a little different. And actually, for my clients, I tell them aim for your protein, get, I want people to really like get a lot of fiber. So I want people to get like, 25 grams of fiber. And then as far as where they fall via the amount of carbohydrate versus fat, I think that's a personal choice. I don't think there is now, there have been some Harvard studies looking at percentage of carbohydrate. The higher, so if you're right at 50% of carbohydrate, that's like the healthiest long term. But I think it really depends on the type of fat that you're having. So some people have a little bit more fat than others, and some people have more carbohydrate than others. And I honestly think that that's a personal decision, and what type of food you like to eat. As long as I feel like as long as you're maintaining your protein levels, you're maintaining your fiber, and that you're not way overdoing it on your calories, then whatever's left, you can split in whatever way you want, depending on what it is that you're eating and what you like to eat.
Do you have like sugars are clearly not great other than say a little bit of natural, fruits and things, but do you have any guidance on like maximum grams of sugar or what range of sugars we should be aiming for?
So I try to really minimize added sugars, ideally less than 10 grams of added sugars. But this also depends on what it is like in terms of training, for example. So if you have somebody who really doesn't do a whole lot of exercise, I want them to have as few added sugars as possible. And that includes not just simple sugars, but, in terms of like table sugar or honey, but it also includes things like white pasta or white rice. However, if I have somebody who is competing in sports or is an athlete, then especially like race week or pre-training, or even during a training session, they need to have sugar. Otherwise, they will run out of glycogen and they won't be able to complete their training session. So it's very individual and it's very dependent on what's going on at that time. So if somebody's, like in the middle of marathon training and has a 4-hour run, they're going to be taking in, I'll speak for myself. I take in 100 calories of practically pure sugar every 45 minutes when I'm on that run. Otherwise, I won't be able to complete the run. So that's, again, it varies based on the circumstances. But if outside of the exercise training window, if you're not exercising for more than an hour and a half at a given time, the ideal is to really minimize your simple sugars.
And in terms of, say, sugar substitutes, I know most of them are pretty bad, but like what do you think about, or what's your understanding of, say, like stevia and monk fruit? I understand are sort of better ones, but even that, I've seen some things that indicate that it might have an impact on, your blood sugar levels.
Yeah. So I haven't done the full research on the monk fruit, so I can't really comment on that one. But stevia seems to be one that is pretty well tolerated. It's actually a natural plant. I grew it myself for a little bit. It's extremely sweet, and it's like literally just the plant sweetness. It doesn't trigger insulin the same way. I tell people to try to minimize their addiction to the sweetness, right? So slowly taper off to the point where you're not needing to add it to anything. You don't need it in your coffee. You don't need it in your tea. You don't need those extra, like a piece of fruit will taste sweet enough, and you don't need the extra dessert, for example, in that way. So it's more of a trying to minimize the use if at all possible. But yeah, the monk fruit, I haven't done the research to comment specifically on.
Awesome. And I feel like I'm taking up all the time asking
Oh,
questions.
good questions.
Be quiet after this, but I also wanted to ask, so you were talking about different labs, like when we go to the doctor, I mean, I think like bone density isn't a super common one. Like what are that's a little bit different, but like what are the labs we should be like asking for that aren't the standard ones? Because I feel like there were some on there that you were talking about that I haven't necessarily seen regularly.
Right. So you might get pushback from your doctor, to be honest, because people that go through insurance, like they have labs that they can test and can't, but or won't, I don't know. So for me, on all my clients, I test hormones such as testosterone. I don't test estradiol and progesterone in women who are cycling because those numbers vary throughout the cycle so much. But I'll do it postmenopausally when I've got someone on hormone therapy, just to check their numbers and make sure that we're in like an appropriate range. Really, we'd go by symptoms, but that's one. But testosterone, definitely. Vitamin D, I highly recommend. Obviously, thyroid studies. I add a bunch of extra things based on an individual, but as far as muscle and bone goes, calcium is something that is routinely tested, but that comes in a regular panel. I'll add phosphorus if somebody has concerns about bone health. Those are the kind of main ones. So vitamin D, calcium, phosphorus, hormones. The hormones specifically, testosterone, free testosterone. I also test DHEA, which is a precursor to testosterone, and sex hormone binding globulin, which also is you put them all together to kind of get a picture of what's going on in the sex steroids. So
speaking of hormone replacement therapy, can you just talk for like a minute about that and like what the role of that and how what that does and is beneficial and the benefits versus the risks?
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't talk about this enough. And I had to learn it myself because I wasn't on it. When I discovered that I had osteoporosis, I hadn't been on it for I was in menopause for over 5 years before I got started. And the reason why was so that my primary kind of was like, well, you don't have symptoms. I wasn't having like hot flashes and things. Turns out it's not just for hot flashes, right? So obviously bone density, bone health is extremely important, but there's so much more. It's brain health, brain fog, muscle, joints. So in general, plus postmenopausal women, even almost on a separate level, every woman who is postmenopausal should be on a vaginal estradiol, like vaginal estrogen. Talk to your doctor, get on it. Decreases risk of UTIs by at least 20%, makes life so much more pleasurable. No reason why anybody, it does not get systemically absorbed to any great degree. It doesn't increase risk of uterine cancer. It doesn't increase risk of breast cancer. Nothing bad about it in general, unless you're allergic to it. But, so talk to your doctor, get on it. Okay, that's vaginal. So systemic, if you have a uterus, you need to be on both estradiol and progesterone. If you have estradiol only, then your uterine lining will get too big and then you can have uterine cancer. So you, generally speaking, estradiol is a patch. It could be a gel. So estradiol is topical. Progesterone is a pill, and the progesterone is taken at night. It helps with sleep tremendously. Most women tolerate it really, really well. Some people get very sleepy, so might have to have some adjustments. And again, everybody's different, but all of these are bioidentical. So the testing that was done through the Women's Health Initiative study back in the late 90s that showed some questions about breast cancer risk, et cetera, those were done with different formulations. They were done with Premarin, which was the estradiol was the horse conjugated horse estrogens, and it was oral. So oral has to metabolize through the liver. It's a very different delivery system. And then the progesterone for those was not bioidentical. It was a synthetic. So medroxyprogesterone. Anyway, this pronunciation. But and so the studies that caused all these women to come off of their hormones back in the late 90s and early 2000s are not this. Those are not the same medications that we are using currently, and also the studies, I will say, were a bit. They're realizing they were a bit flawed in their conclusions, and so I would absolutely say talk to your doctor about getting on them. It's not rocket science. It's a patch and a pill in general. The patch changes twice a week in general. There are variations again, but it helps in so many ways. The brain has estrogen receptors. When we go into menopause, the estrogen receptors upregulate. The body needs estrogen. It's dying for estrogen. And so this way you give it some back, try to help out your muscles and your bones and your brain. And
once you go on it, is the idea you just stay on it, like even after the end of menopause, because of all the protective elements that this has?
So menopause, the official definition is 1 year post not cycling anymore. So when you're in menopause, then the question of how long you stay on is a discussion between you and your doctors. The issue is that nobody has really done the study to see, is there any point where you take someone off? They haven't done it, right? So as far as I'm concerned right now, I'm not expecting to stop it for any reason anytime soon, unless I'm given good, credible evidence as to why I should, or something happens in my own health that means I have to. So yeah, you can get on it and stay on it as far as we know, for the time being. Oh, and are you guys still there? Yes? Okay. Because it's 1:00. So do we, I'm happy to continue staying on until I get kicked off, but does anybody else have any other questions?
Kathy, this is Laura. I have two quick ones.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Soy milk versus almond milk. So I ran to get my almond milk because in your example with the oatmeal, you mentioned soy.
Yep.
So any advantage to soy versus almond? That's one.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second question is, my really bad habit is Coke Zero. Tell me why that is so bad.
Okay. So soy milk has advantages over almond milk in that it has more protein. Also, it has phytoestrogens, which are the good type of phytoestrogens, which stimulate the receptors, which are anti-cancer, but you have to choose organic. That's the difference. If you don't choose organic, then they spray it with Roundup. So that's not good. So I like that. And then Coke Zero. So all the artificial sweeteners have been shown to still cause an issue with insulin signaling and very detrimental to your gut microbiome. So if you can choose some other sparkly, beverage, like a sparkling water that's non-sweetened, maybe, and even add like a tiny little bit of juice to it if you need to. I'm not a fan of juice, but if you feel like you need something sweet, or you choose something with stevia, then it would be a big improvement to switch those two out. Good. Okay. Anybody else? No. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for joining me. I hope this was helpful. Don't forget to do your air squats. And if you guys have any questions afterwards, please feel free to reach out. Thank you so
Hey, Kathy, can you will you make available your PowerPoint deck there? I would love to have that. I was trying to take notes, but it was
yeah, I can share it with you. Or the other thing is I've recorded this, so I can share the recording as well.
That would be awesome.
All right. It was great seeing everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kathy.
Welcome. Bye.
Thank you.